Good morning, YouTubers and Facebook and all my other Rumble, which I haven't been up to date with because of issues I've been having. But be it known, I will get that all taken care of today. Sorry about the headphone mishaps. I have two headphones. I should mark one studio and computer. But, oh well. Last night I did a show at about 1 a.m. in the morning. That's going to be going up. This is a repeat, just a little bit more in depth on it. This is going to be News with View. You all know that by now. A Fat Cat production, hosted by me, John Acosta. Today is July 24th. I'm going to fix this because it is the 24th today. And this is going to be a relabeled episode 110. We're going to have in this 4 things, but they're going to be some very in-depth. But you'll like it. One is going to be the Supreme Court rules in Trump's favor with the Consumer Protection Safety Commission, the CPSC, that he does have the authority and power to remove those people. So, with that, I want people to understand that if the Supreme Court rules that he can remove, fire, dismiss, give the boot to these heads of these agencies, and these are independent agencies inside the executive branch, then that goes to reason, and you got to use common sense, that he can tell the workers you're going to get laid off. He can set the bar on all that, and under the guidelines of the Federal Office of Personnel Management, not personal, but personnel management, OPM, there's rules. And that's how the Supreme Court is going to look at what Trump can do inside the agencies. This should give you, I said this before, these were some of the things that I was originally on the fence with, as saying, could the Trump do these since these are Senate confirmed people? And the more I looked into it, the more I said, this doesn't have to do with a case called the Humphreys probate that was settled by the Supreme Court in 1934 against President Roosevelt, who had fired the Humphreys, the head of the Federal Trade Commission, because Humphreys was not going along with the New Deal, and said that was, he wasn't with that it was unconstitutional, he couldn't do it. And so Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, hey, great, out, and he fired him. It went to court, and it was actually, he died, Humphreys died before it got to the Supreme Court. But his wife picked up the fight, and that's how it became the Humphreys probate ruling, because you couldn't put the guy back, he's gone. But in that, the courts had ruled to say that the president was not allowed to fire him or remove him just because he disagreed. They disagreed with one another. So all that ended up happening was FDR said, fine, he had 5 more years, or whatever years left he had in that position, pay the salary and move on, because he had already replaced him. He was dead. He couldn't come back, and that's the way it goes. This shows that in independent agencies, Trump rules supreme. And there can be no more question about that. This is a ruling from the Supreme Court, and those rulings are final. There's no appeals. That's it. Game over. Thank you. Clean your drawers out and get out. So that was a win that I said that originally, like I said, I was 50-50 on the fence until I started really going into the Constitution and going into the management rights under the federal government. And I meant to write that down. I think it's 7605 or 7601. Under that, I'm going to look this up real quick because it bothers me that I didn't do it. And that's really bad of me. I'm going to say federal management rights. Federal management. So it becomes very lawyery. Okay, it's 7106. It's a statute subsection 7106, management rights. So I was close, 7106. So in there is what the management is allowed to do, and since Trump is the head of the management, yeah, he gets he gets to do that. So Richard Trumka Jr. sat on that. Was one of the 4 people. 4 people or 3 people? Don't know. I forget the names of the other people. But Trumka came from the Trumka Union family. Very powerful. His father was very powerful in the unions. A staunch fighter for union rights, staunch advocate for the working class. Kind of in a Jimmy Hoffa type of personality. He was a tough guy. Trumka was a tough guy. And his son, Richard Trumka Jr., became I'm almost certain he became a lawyer and then got picked to sit on this agency because of his father's connections. Just like Comey's daughter working in the prosecutor's office in New York, federal prosecutor's office. It's all connections. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong. I don't feel, as long as the people are capable of doing the job, they got to live within inside the framework of the agency they're working with. It isn't like they could run rogue. But happens all the time. Wow. Nepotism at work. Who would have thunk it, right? All right, well, that's that one. The other one I'm going to discuss is the Epstein files, then Colbert, and then birthrights. So we got a full day here. I kind of jumped into that because it was one of my topics that I knew Trump was going to win on anything to do with agencies inside the management of the executive branch. He reigns supreme. He is the supreme leader, and there's no getting around that. That's the way that works, and that's what he's going to do. Well, that's interesting. That took a dip there instead of a mix, but that's all right. As you can see on my desk, I have the 14th Amendment flashing and the Constitution. All right. Federal judge rules on Trump's request to unseal Epstein's grand jury transcripts. Well, they said no. Judge Rosenberg said her hands are tied. She can't release the information contained inside a sealed grand jury testimony. And Trump knew this because, remember, he fought in Georgia with this, and, you can't release it, you can release it, you can't, it went back and forth. And the thing with grand jury testimony, it's very hard to pierce that. Because since its conception, and this was way back in George Washington time, folks, it was meant to be so that people could give testimony in secret, and it stays there, and the government then can act on it. Now, very controversial in its time, because what does the Constitution say? You have the right to face your accuser. So this became very, there was a lot of, if you read on the Constitution, in this particular avenue in the law, it got very murky. Some people were for it, some people were really against it. They just said, no, you can't do that. You could ask it in open court, you could do that, and bring your evidence forward. But this was to build cases, and it was meant to be kept secret. And the courts really do shield that under the Federal Criminal Procedure 6E, which enshrines the traditional rule of grand jury secrecy, establishes exceptions that allow grand jury material, such as transcript of witness testimonies, to be disclosed to certain outside parties in limited circumstances. Some of these exceptions allow for automatic disclosure to necessary government personnel, meaning the lawyers have to look at it on the federal side, for example, but many exceptions require that disclosure be authorized by a federal district court in the jurisdiction where the jury is convened. As the court ultimately has some degree of supervisory authority over the grand jury, Rule 6E3E provides in relevant part that the court may authorize disclosure of a grand jury matter primarily to or in connection with a judicial proceeding, meaning there's, hey folks, and there's more to this. To a defendant who shows grounds may exist to dismiss the indictment because of something that occurred before the grand jury. So if a defendant says, no, the grand jury had the wrong information, now how they would know that or whatever, under those, the court may allow it to be pierced. And then 3, the request of the government to a foreign court or prosecutor or to an appropriate state subdivision, Indian tribunal, military, or foreign government official for the purposes of enforcing or investigating a violation of the respective jurisdiction's criminal law, meaning if this took place, something happened and the grand jury heard it, and it was about a case that's also going on in France, France could ask to look at that. Persons seeking court authorization under one of these exceptions must make a strong showing of a particularized need. So, you just can't go in there and go, I think there is something in there that's wrong. No. You must have a reason. And saying, approving my guilt, my client's innocence. No, that won't work. You have evidence to counter the charges. No, you don't get to hear how we were able to discover all this and from who and the particulars. That comes later. That at trial you can do that. But what transpired in the grand jury to get us to the point of a charge and then a trial, if one was going to happen, no. So that outweighs the public interest in secrecy. So if it was so egregious that this, we should release it, the judge said that I can't do it. It's the wrong court. So they can kick it higher. But I think in all honesty and everything else, it can't be released. Just to satisfy an itch, you want it scratched. Not good enough. Now, it's interesting that this lines up. Gisela Maxwell is slated now to speak. The committee has said, we want to talk to her about this. And I don't know yet if she's agreed to talk to them. She might have agreed to talk to them. Now, does she have to talk to them? She might have to appear if she's subpoenaed and she's in custody. They're going to deliver her. But she could just take the Fifth Amendment. She could take her Fifth Amendment rights and say, as much as you guys want to know of everything that's going on here, no, I'm going to take my Fifth. So any question after this point, it's going to be answered with under advisement from counsel. I'm exercising my Fifth Amendment rights. Now, she could go in there beforehand and go, hey, listen, fellas, I know what you want to hear. And I might have some. I don't know, because I don't know what your questions are yet. But a lot of people have asked me questions, and the answers are already there, or that I could give, or that I know, or didn't know. But here's the deal. Maybe one of you geniuses have a question that wasn't asked me that could unlock doors. But I'm not going to do that while I'm in jail. So, if you want to hear from me, it's when I'm outside of jail. Now, you can do that. That's not, you're not saying it's extortion or it's, a quid pro quo, kind of. But a defendant can do that. Cut me a deal. cut me a deal. One, it's a full immunity deal. Everything I tell you can't be used against me. And I want it retroactive to the day you put the bracelets on me. You know, the lawyers will figure that all out and get that word soup figured out. And with that, I'm automatically released from jail. But after you prove that my testimony was truthful and accurate, but if it's not helpful for you, because I've answered those questions already and I'm going to answer them the same way, there's not going to be, you know, I'll answer those questions. If you asked me those questions before, that's great. But if you don't ask me the right question, I don't divulge. So you got to ask the right questions. And you do that, I can give you an answer. And it might be an answer I've already given. If I've given you nothing new and you're sitting here and goes, hey, this is nothing more than we had already, well, that was your price to hear it a second time. And she gets a walk. But if you release this grand jury information before any maybe retrial, remember, she's appealing. She's gone, and the appeal was denied. Now it gets bumped up. And if this information is out there already, and it's now been out there, the defense can definitely use that to their defense. Whereas the prosecution is behind the eight ball now because this gets all spilled out and, you know, a court has already found her guilty. It's already been done. She has been found guilty. So if you release this information and she hasn't asked for it to be released, so she doesn't need it for her case, what do you need it for? Tabloids? No, that doesn't happen. So it was a good ruling, and the Trump people knew this. They knew it. They were going, hey, we want to release it too, but you know we have to go through the court. Yeah, you know that wasn't going to happen. So, caca. All right. The next thing. All things Colbert. All things Colbert. What is our whiny, crying, late night talk host crying about now? Well, USA Today said Colbert's cancellation, a ratings crisis or a political bribe? We investigate. So they investigate. Since Stephen Colbert's announcement that CBS would discontinue The Late Show, not discontinuing it. See how already the USA says discontinue. Now, he might have used that word, but I don't see it in quotations. So they're going to say discontinue. His show was not discontinued. It just was not renewed. And he has till May of 2026, as per his contract, to continue doing The Late Show. And they continued, in one version, Paramount, CBS's parent company, is bending to the knee to President Donald Trump, ousting his frequent critic Colbert to help appease an administration they hope will approve a major merger with Skydance Media before the FCC, because the FCC has to agree to it. Now, the FCC has already agreed that you could start the negotiations, that, get the whole package together, and when you guys work out all the details, you give it to us. They go then and recommend to the Department of Justice, we looked at this, and yeah, everything looks good. They look over it and they go, yeah, fine, that's not a problem. So what they're saying is that, was this settlement with Trump to push it through so the FCC would look and go, yeah. Well, there was nothing written in the settlement agreements that any one of us have seen where it said, oh, by the way, on top of the money, and I did want an apology, but you're not giving me the apology, but you're going to give me the money, so why would you give me the money if you didn't screw up? So I win. This is Trump thinking. But even if in that conversation, and even in the terms of the agreement for the settlement, it said Colbert must be fired or canceled or whatever, he's got to go. That's not a bribe. That is not extortion. That's called litigation. Because CBS, Paramount could always turn around and say, we're not doing that. We'll give you the money. We'll hold our nose and write the check and give it to you. But you're not going to tell us he could be fired. He hasn't done anything that would violate his contract with us. And as such, yeah, we're not interested in doing that. At that point, Trump, during his negotiation, could go, well, that's great. The money deal that we were going to agree with, gone. I'll continue taking you to court. And, I'll ask the court to hold $250 million in escrow for a settlement that may come after Skydance Media takes over. So, Skydance Media could turn around to Paramount and goes, listen, we can't have this hanging over our head. Who's easier to appease, Colbert or Trump? Well, we're looking at it. He's losing $40 million. Cut him loose. He's losing money. When we take it over, we don't want to lose $40 million. Don't fire him. We just want you to make it known to him, because he's still your employee, that Skydance is not interested in renewing his contract come May 2026. That's all. That's not extortion. That's litigation. Now, if Trump would have, during the negotiations, said to anyone but his lawyers, I'm going to tell you what, you don't get rid of this effing guy, I'm going to turn the heat up with the FCC. You won't even be able to buy paper. I'll jam you up so many different ways. Unless you go and do it, you fire him. Because I'll have the FCC investigate you, I'll have the Department of Justice, and then that can be considered not a bribe. That could be considered extortion. Now, he could go to his lawyers and say, that's what I'd like to do, and the lawyers would go, we can't do that, and if you insist on that, we no longer represent you. Because not only is it unethical for us to do that, it is illegal for us to do that. So, don't ask us again about that, because we'll tell you right now, if you insist on going down that road, we're out of here. And of course, Skydance wouldn't allow it, and the lawyers at CBS Paramount, no one would allow it. They go right to the courts and going, this is why this suit is baloney, boom, put an end to it, and we want charges and blah, and they would win that, of course. So there was no bribe, there was no extortion, but there certainly could have been a quid pro quo, which is not illegal. It's called litigation. It's called negotiations. I'll give you this, you must give me that. And part of it could be, they might come out and said, yeah, hey, they can have a non-disclosure agreement, and the government can pierce that, and has. And they might go in there and go, well, we consider that a bribe. No bribe. We went back and forth with it, and we didn't fire him. We just exercised our right not to renew his contract. You know? And we have the right to change our mind up to the day we get rid of him. So, this is a business decision. It had nothing to do with a settlement, but just was a business decision. And they could put that, if it's in writing as part of the agreement of terms of agreement, then you could say, well, it wasn't a business decision. And it goes, yeah, it was a business, we're moving on. You know, he's losing $40 million. We can justify not keeping him around. So, and my part was, as the Colbert Show was in the top of his talk show peers at 11:30 p.m., he was still losing reportedly $40 million a year. And ad revenue was running away. The market was getting much tighter. The eyeballs might have been there, but eyeballs don't necessarily turn into dollars. And mostly in late night, because there's no lead into a next show. After that show's over, CBS used to put up, up to the minute. Or, or gave the airtime back to the stations in some cases. You fill it with infomercials, or CBS would have something up there. So there wasn't that much programming going on to have people glued in front of their television set. So ad revenue was dropping. And they went on to say is an explanation for the cancellation is at least partly true that it was money. And I look at it and go, well, what part of $40 million in losses is partly true? That could be a good enough reason alone to get rid of him. And everything else that he's been doing, we don't see this improving. We decided not to renew his contract. And my spin on this is CBS should either terminate for cause, and his actions on Monday telling the president, boom, boom, that goes beyond his protection on the stage of doing his show. And when I say protection, CBS, Paramount, they have a company policy, an employee company policy, that everyone has to, who's working for CBS, or vendors, or anyone else, has to adhere to. Now, inside Colbert's contract of doing the show, of course, there are carve-outs. He can make fun of things. He can say things. He can be blue up to FCC network standards. And he can say things that normally, if he said them in the cafeteria, he could be fired. So there is a protection bubble around a lot of these people. Radio hosts have it. They all have it. There's boundaries. I would say that he broke two boundaries of that. One, when he said it sounded like or looked like a big fat bribe. That could get investors to go, I don't want to be associated with a company that's doing bribing. Sponsors could turn around and go, we don't want to be associated with that. And that's exactly why in the contracts there's a code of ethics that you must follow, even Colbert. So that would be one where the company could turn around and go, hey, we're definitely not happy about that. And you might have to go out there and go, listen, I used this word. It's not the word I wanted to use, but that's what came out. And I'll tell you why I even have a problem with that. The second one was on Monday when he said, gave Trump the finger on air and made some other references. And why I would think that Colbert could stand a chance if they used that against him to remove him is the fact that his show was taped at 5 in the evening and edited and then put into what we call CAN, into the servers for digital playback at 11:36 p.m. And Standards and Practices watches his show. They get a live feed to it. They have a lawyer either there or on the phone, and they're there. And they could have told him, take that out of the show. You can't do that. Take it out of the show. And he could go, I'm not taking it out of the show. It stays. They then go to the production people and go, hey, this is our lawyer. You guys work for us. At 6 minutes, 32 seconds into the show, we want you to black 10 seconds out and then continue on. And do it, save it. Thank you. And that's it. They could have blocked that. They could have let him get up to that point, put a black slug in, and then transitioned out of it. So CBS, in essence, allowed that to happen. And it went out. Now, it could say, hey, it was our bad judgment, but he still said it. And it was our bad judgment that we let it go out on air. But it doesn't mean that he gets away with it. If I left my wallet on a table and someone came strolling by and they go, I left the wallet on the table, boom, boom, I take the cash out of it and walk away. I can't go, well, he left his wallet on the table. Well, you weren't supposed to steal it. Well, no one told me that, but they allowed it to be on the table. Do you understand that logic, Bob? You getting there? So he could be fired. And what I would have done, the CBS should have terminated for cause Stephen Colbert, or suspend airing his show and pay him till his contract expires. Meaning that we're going to fulfill the monetary aspect of your contract, so you're not hurt financially. You will get paid, and at the end of May, we part company, and that's it. And I would go for that route. I'd go, again, not knowing his contract where he goes, if I produce a show, but he doesn't produce it. It's owned by CBS, so it isn't like the Letterman. Letterman was different. But there, CBS produces the show. It's their show. They can do with it what they please up to a point, meaning unless it's something that violated standards and practices for the company, they couldn't tell him what he could do on his show, as long as it met standards and practices. And just because something slips through, or the guy goes, well, maybe this guy has standards and practices, he might need to be fired. But they could make their case. But if Colbert is left on the air, the possibility that he may cause a crisis with either the FCC or make a libelous statement, which CBS Paramount would then be obligated to have to defend. Why should they have to take that risk? This guy's angry. This guy is there. I can take my gloves off now. I can do this. No. I'm not going to give you the avenue for that. If you want to stand on the street corner on a soapbox and do it, more power to you, brother. But you're not doing it here. We're not putting it on air. And you're not doing it as an employee. You violate your terms of your contract. But I'm not stopping you from going out on the street and doing it. Be my guest. Why should Paramount CBS take that responsibility? It's just easier to cut that anchor loose. The argument could be that he might double his viewership, which I absolutely think that he would. But that does not translate the dollars, because you're going to have sponsors fleeing. They're not going to want to be associated with that. There's other places for them to put their money. That's not one of them. And all this idea of, Jimmy Kimmel and all these other guys are standing behind me. Let me tell you something right now, folks. You know what they're hoping for? That Colbert is fired tomorrow. Where does his eyeballs then go to? Fallon and Kimmel. There's a good possibility Kimmel might pick up a 30-40% eyeball rate. And if ABC wants to try to transition that into dollars, go ahead. There's only so many spots and so many show segments that you could shove commercials into that people will then, not start watching. But they could try. Those eyeballs will go elsewhere. They're not going to sit at a test pattern and watch it. And they're not going to see reruns. That's just not going to happen. So you're telling me that Jimmy Kimmel and all these people and Jon Stewart, they're only hoping that Colbert is gone. Because, hallelujah, I found numbers. Those people are going to watch ABC. Those people are going to watch NBC. They might even watch some, Rachel Maddow or other shows that can come up and become bottom feeders. All right. CBS host pours cold water on liberal outrage to Colbert's cancellation and states late night industry is broken. CBS Morning co-host Tony Dokoupil, 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 is pushing back on the liberal outrage and was quoted as saying the business is broken. And what no one seems to acknowledge is that the politics has changed. The business changed, and so did the politics. And it got way more one-sided than anything Johnny Carson ever was doing. I think we should reflect on those changes as well. It's been a big shift culturally in that regard also. So the idea that this is just something that, it's a Trump is doing it and it's it's a bribe, it's extortion. It's not the case. The audiences are changing. The View, not News with a View. The View host Sonny Hostin warns Colbert's cancellation could lead to the dismantling of our Constitution. What a stupid, stupid woman. That might have to be the stupidest narrative I've heard yet. I just want to remind Ms. Hostin, Stephen Colbert was not elected to the Late Show. Jimmy Kimmel was not. None of them were. They weren't appointed by a government official. They are, just like you, hon, a paid employee of a company. Who has a contract which is going to be filled. You can work up to the last day of your contract. We're going to pay you. His cancellation which was not a cancellation. They just did not renew his contract. He's not canceled. If Fox wants to hire him when he's done, if MSNBC wants to hire him when he's done, they can. He's not canceled. He's just not renewed. We didn't pick up his contract. It's like saying a baseball player that they must keep him no matter what. She might be the stupidest person who's allowed to speak on the View to start with. And she went on to say, Colbert's show, based on the timing of the announcement, she pointed out that if politics were involved, then the fabric of democracy could be in jeopardy. You're a moron. You don't understand what democracy is. You don't have a meaning of that. You are a stupid, stupid person. And that really aggravates me because they give her news time. My concern is, if it's political, then everyone should be concerned. People on the right should be concerned. People on the left should be concerned. Because it's very clear that if it's political, this is dismantling of our democracy. This is the dismantling of our Constitution, right? Houston said to the cheering of a studio audience, monkeys with cymbals. Clap now. Okay. Stupidest. Show me in the Constitution where a company has to hire someone. Or has to, once they hire them, they must keep them forever. And if it was political, if Trump says this guy has to go, or I won't settle my suit with you, that's litigation. That's a quid pro quo. That's not a conspiracy. And that is not extortion. Houston, you are a very ignorant person. At least when it comes to what a democracy is. Trump on his social media page said, the word is, and it's a strong word at that, Jimmy Kimmel is next to go in the untalented late night sweepstakes. And shortly thereafter, Jimmy Fallon will be gone too. No mention of Jon Stewart, though. Or John Oliver. Both of whom, of them all, Jon Stewart is probably the brightest of them all. Colbert is smart. I'm not going to say that Colbert is a dumb guy. Kimmel is not a smart guy, and neither is Fallon. They're opportunists. They're actors. They're comedians. Jon Stewart, smart guy. Clever. Can make fun of you in a way that is clever and true, and, you know. So, wasn't too concerned with him. He'll always find a place, and but Colbert, and I said this in much earlier shows, he was doomed. And when Skydance was going to take over the company, he had to have known that he weren't going to last, that they weren't going to renew his contract. And if they did renew his contract, he'd be so severely hobbled that it wouldn't be worth it for him. But now now he's been weaponized. And if I was CBS and Paramount, I'd keep him away from a camera. That this can only bring trouble. And if CBS doesn't care, they better be prepared for FCC retaliation for violating, FU and things like that. Not for other, other things. All right, hold on one second. Hey,
Hey, what's going on?
doing my show right now, so I'll call you right back.
Oh,
All right, bye. Yeah, that was an important call. But the fact of the matter is that free speech is not being hampered here. This is not a constitutional issue. Colbert is not being stopped from saying what he wants to say. He can go outside and do it on the street. Just can't do it in my building. And that's what I would do. I'd get rid of the guy. All right. Last thing on the agenda here as we're hitting the almost 1 hour mark. Appeal court rules Trump birthright order unconstitutional. And the district court correctly, this is funny, correctly concluded that the executive order proposed interpretation denying citizenships to many persons born in the United States is unconstitutional. We fully agree, the ruling reads. Gould, who wrote that the administration's defense utilized a network of inferences that are unmoored from the accepted legal principles of 1868, when the 14th Amendment was ratified. The court agrees that the president cannot redefine what it means to be an American with the stroke of a pen. Washington Attorney General Nick Brown said in a statement to USA Today, he cannot strip away the rights, liberties, and protection of children born in our country. Well, that's going to be answered on the 27th. And if those people were not supposed to have those rights that are being stripped away, well, I think Attorney General Nick Brown needs to read this book. The original meaning of the 14th Amendment. And it will explain all that you need to know. That 14th Amendment, when it came down to birthrights, was very specific on why that was included. And it was to really fix the 13th Amendment that didn't answer the question of those people that were brought here in chains and then having children here. And they didn't need a 15th Amendment to address that. They were going to pack it all into the 14th Amendment to correct the 13th Amendment. To say that children born of people that were brought here in chains had rights, became citizens. This was done because, remember, Lincoln's plan was to ship them all off to Liberia or Haiti or somewhere else. You weren't citizens. So off you go. Go back to where you came from. When you came from Africa, we'll put you in Africa somewhere. Liberia, and figure it out there. And that changed in 1868 when they said, well, the children born, the ones that were brought here, and remember, there were really no more slaves being brought over after a certain period because it was prevented. Now, it was still happening, but it was being hampered. English law said they couldn't take the slave trades, but there was a lot of slave trade going on. But the idea was once you were brought over here, you then became a citizen. But that wasn't really the case because if they were citizens, then they would be protected. And since the South separated and became its own nation, the Confederate nation, to the Confederate, our laws no longer applied. And that's why under the 14th Amendment, the words sedition and insurrection and people that were in power that took positions couldn't return to power inside the United States. The 14th Amendment is probably one of the most complicated amendments in our Constitution. And it is a wordsmith of paragraphs. It's pretty amazing. So this 14th Amendment, very powerful, and it makes for good reading, but it would put you to sleep because you're going to read all the players that were involved with the 14th Amendment. And they had sent letters to one another, and they were in the Library of Congress, all retrievable, and they were put in a book. And you could actually see what their intent was. Now, because the court has ruled on some of these cases in the past, where they go, well, we have legal precedent. Yes, you do have legal precedent. That is undeniable. It doesn't mean it was sound. And the Supreme Court has, Roe v. Wade has shown, has reversed itself. This isn't a matter of reversing themselves. And again, under the executive branch, there is no upper limit of things that the president can't do. It is really executive power. That's as close to a king as you can get inside the executive branch. So Trump, as I keep saying, is not testing the limit because there is no limit. Absolutely no limit to the Constitution. He's defining it. Now, again, 10 years from now, 2 years from now, 100 years from now, the robes can redefine it. They can go back in, but see, this is it is not like Roe v. Wade, which was a ruling of and they used the privacy issue with it, which should never have been done. It was stupid. it should have been exactly where it ended up, in the state's hands. The 14th Amendment has very interpretive language. It is there. It's been there. I'm comfortable in whatever the decision of the Supreme Court is, even though, like, I teased Bob in New York, and we tease one another. Because it doesn't change anything that's happening today. The world doesn't unravel because it would just be business as usual. So, not a big deal to me. What it is a big deal for is that if they do say Trump is correct in what he's saying, that does unravel a lot of things and does change this country. But it just might correct what has been wrong. And now we're all going to have to pay for that. It's going to be a lot for people to digest. Not so much if the court rules against Trump, because really then nothing changes. Everything just stays the same. And then you could start making laws that then fence in some of these things. But if the court agrees with the Trump administration's view, then yes, that is a major, major change for this country. But it might have been that's the way it should have been. So, don't know. All right, I'm going to end this. As always, if you can give to a charity, please give to a charity of your choice. You go to that charity. Don't have them come to you. Don't be a victim helping victims. If you're uncomfortable with that, give to a food bank. And when I say food, it could be toilet paper, it could be diapers, it could be baby bottles, formula, stuff that people need. And if you go to the store and there's a buy one, get one free, and it's food, and you were going to buy it anyway, hey, you just got someone just got a free can of tomatoes, corn, beef, buy one, get one free. Those little canned ham things, delicious. And you might say, well, that's not a big deal, 4 cans, 5 cans. The people that don't have 4 or 5 cans, yeah, that's a big deal. That's a meal for the day, for their family. And no questions asked, and not saying, well, maybe if you did this, or maybe you did that. That's beyond it. They're suffering. It has to be addressed. Good conscience tells you it has to be addressed. So you can do that. Say a prayer. Prayer works. Stand by that every day. And with that, I am going to fade to black. I probably on YouTube will bounce back up for a second till I get my still store up there, and then I end. All right. All right. All right. And I fade to black.